Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Molly Grover with the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce on behalf of the Chamber and Greater Dubuque Development Corporation. Thank you for joining us for this DBQ Air presentation, Your Travel Choices Matter. And indeed they do. We have air service. We have morning flights, and we couldn't be more excited about this. But it is up to all of us to make sure that we keep air service. That is why you are here this morning. We have all the ingredients. We have all the pieces. We have all the right stuff. We have momentum on our side. We're going to share information with you this morning, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our mayor, Mr. Brad Kavanaugh. Mr. Mayor.
Well, thanks, Molly. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. The fact that you're all taking the time to be here today says a lot about you and about the dedication that you have to our community. So I just wanted to take a moment here to begin and kind of give us the lay of the land and say a few things, kind of start the conversation about where we've been and where we're going. You'll see me looking at some notes here that I wrote down, so forgive me for that, but I just want to share a few thoughts with you first before I turn it over to Matt Skinner next. So I want to begin by having everybody think about the last several years and also where we as a community are going in the next 5 years. So just an example, this summer, the Field of Dreams is going to welcome 650 youth baseball and softball teams to the region. This is just for a chance to play at the Field of Dreams. Good luck finding hotels on the weekends, by the way. There's a permanent stadium at the Field of Dreams, going to be done next year. In 2 days in August this year, 20,000 people are going to be seeing Tim McGraw at the field in concert, and 15,000 more the next day to see Nickelback come play there. There's just no doubt about it. The next decade is going to prove that the Field of Dreams is a truly transformational project in our region. The University of Dubuque, building a medical school. As we speak, it's going to welcome 800 new medical students along with faculty and staff to our downtown region. This is all set to open in 2027. Chaplain Schmidt Island redevelopment, the new Dubuque Museum of Art campus that's in the heart of downtown, redevelopment on the Central Avenue corridor, industrial expansion projects, expansion at the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium, Dubuque Community Y on the way with a new build, new childcare throughout the entire region, 2,600 new housing units under construction, more development in the Millwork District, more hotels on the way. I could go on, and it's just no surprise at all that Dubuque was featured this weekend in the Wall Street Journal for all the world to see. We have got so much going on. We have created so much momentum in our region like we just haven't seen in years. Now, I want you to consider this. How do we make any of this a reality without full connection to the world through air service at our Dubuque Regional Airport? So today is about something very important because the time has come for us to challenge ourselves to think differently about what we can accomplish together. I want you to just, I want to present a challenge here for a moment and say that if we're being honest with ourselves, I think for a very long time, Dubuque has been pretty happy with just good enough. Our downtown, even with empty buildings and blighted areas, was good enough for a long time. Our lack of housing that kept people from moving around Dubuque or moving to Dubuque was good enough. Businesses that we had were good enough. We didn't need any more. We didn't need the ones that were here to grow and improve. Our schools and colleges were good enough. It was good enough to just have a small movie set at the Field of Dreams that people visited every once in a while. And it was good enough for us to drive 80 miles to get to the next airport. I actually think that we all can recognize that we are and we can do better than good enough. And here's a perfect example. Think about where we were 1 year ago today when it comes to air service. We still did not have a connection to a major hub. And since that time, not only do we have a connection to a major hub, but we've been able to manage to get morning flights in that connection. So in this moment right here, we have, I think, one of the greatest opportunities to completely break through the one major barrier that still exists for us in this region, and that is air service. That is the ability to have this full connection that we need. And the fate of service at our Dubuque Regional Airport is entirely in our hands in this moment. And every single person who's on this meeting this morning and everybody in this community can play a pivotal role in making it a success. So once again, thank you very much for being here. It's incredible to see the turnout for this. Looking forward to a very good discussion. It's a very important one. So today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about where we've been through both the challenges and the successes. We're going to talk about where we are now, and we're going to talk about the opportunity that we have in front of us with air service here in the Dubuque region. So to get the conversation started, I want to turn it over to our dedicated and capable partner, Matt Skinner with Global Flight Solutions. He's been working with us throughout this. And after his presentation and a few other moments of folks popping in, we'll have some time for questions at the end, and looking forward to a great discussion this morning.
Mayor, and good to see everybody again. Always appreciate being in this room and connecting with you all. And just as the mayor said, reiterating the dedication of this community towards this project and towards connectivity to the National Transportation Network, and how important that is to an economy, and what an unbelievable economic lever it is in and of itself for a regional economy. And so, in picking up where he had left off, just a quick recap, we didn't have commercial service, 10 months ago, and really are back into that network, back in and connected. And that's the big, one, out of the gate win was reacquiring that service. Yes, we have run into some certain challenges. We got kicked in the shins almost right out of the gate with construction at Chicago, at ORD, which has provided a variety of challenges, actually, both with service and operations. But for the most part now, we believe that is all solved and moving forward. And we are flying from Dubuque into a jet bridge in a gate in the middle of the airport that provides easy access and no sprints, from end to end now. And also just coming off and on without the buses, which were a tough go right at the beginning. And believe me, both Denver Air and the mayor were instrumental, excuse me, in finding solutions with that, talking to the airport itself, pushing with the airline until we could find, a path forward without that hiccup. Because, well, it may be 5 or 10 minutes, it's inconvenient, it doesn't provide flow to travel, and especially as we're trying to make and get everybody to their optimal connections that we've studied pretty in depth and surveyed, etc. With that, then, tied into that conversation was the late afternoon flights, which in many markets as a first flight is very good as it allows time for business meetings and travel to both coasts, but was not optimal for this destination and for this region. And so, we want to thanks again to this group, to the DBQ Air Group, and to Denver Air, pushing and pulling until we were able to find really what is a very unique and optimal setup, where we're able to get out in the morning now, let them run business with the aircraft during the day, and come back in the evening. Like, they have prioritized us. Denver has prioritized Dubuque in giving us those most optimal rotations or operations and operational times. We have seen an immediate reaction in the market. We'll get to that in just a second, where we really think that this is a great fit. Um, in just touching on what the options and opportunity are, as well as, I don't know if it was a challenge before, but we only connected with one airline before. And even in talking to another regional operator at an air conference I was at last week, their opinion is that and what we've seen post pandemic is United is really a dominant carrier, and the dominant carrier with connectivity out of Chicago now. And so with that, and adding both American and United, now we really have a double down, a dual opportunity. We're not locked into one airline, and we have, again, it's more than double the connections we would if it were with American. And so with that, and the optimized schedule and optimized operation, that we're providing a super seamless and really worldwide global connection opportunity, for the destination. And so, having worked through that all over the last 6 months, we went to this early schedule in mid-May, and now is the time to really start pushing forward. And we need to blow this story up. And with this group being advocates for us in the community, and getting the word out that we've got the service set, it has been reset, and now we need to push forward and get everybody on the plane. And you'll hear me come back to that a couple of times. With that, we have seen huge reliability, just as the questions have come up to in some of the early stages here. 98%. I think there's been a total of 4 cancellations since all of November, and I think all of them except maybe one were Chicago, generated. Overall, once things were dialed in, our flights back into Chicago, which are the key ones, arrive within 15 minutes of scheduled time. And especially now, since we have moved out of the middle of the day at O'Hare, we have been running I mean, it's like 98% on the flights out to Chicago, 94% overall with on-time performance, and 60+% of those are actually arriving ahead of schedule now that we're on this early and late. And just as a perspective, this is, 10 to 20 points better than a national or a major airline average. And so really phenomenal service and phenomenal operation now as we getting the word back out to the community that it's reliable, it's every day, it's waiting to connect everybody. The other piece that we want to just provide some specific info on is with that early schedule, just how easy it is and how quick you can get to where you're going, do your business, take your vacation, whatever the case. The team at the city did a great job putting this together where, you're out at 7:50. Well, I like how Vegas is first, and you're in Vegas at the tables by 12:15. But really, with the business pieces, you've got East and West Coast. Everything from Washington to New York, which are so important to this destination, to Denver, LA, and San Francisco. All before 2 o'clock on the West Coast. And really, the same thing coming back. We are able with that late afternoon connection to spend part of your day in that destination, and then you board, midday for those returns, and then coming back out and home into Dubuque in the early evening, which really provides both optimal leisure and business connectivity. The highlight space, in short order, is that, looking at what it's worth in your own daily value and how we look at this and how much of an advantage flying out of Dubuque provides. It's close. We joke that it's actually more like driving to the store than driving to an airport. It's right there in a couple minutes. There's really no waits, no security. There's some advantages we'll talk about in a sec. And you can book this now anywhere that you book flights, whether it's on the United site, the American site, the Denver Air site for local traffic to Chicago, Expedia, Google Flights, etc. All the options are now in each and all of those outlets, just like any other airline, just like you would book in any other situation. Overall, it's very much cost effective, but it's also, and this is what I like to call it, is it's life effective. Sorry. And with that, I don't know if you guys have seen the cool tool on the airport site. If you want to go in and compare, they've actually built this. It's on a page on the airport's sorry, click out of one of the main airport pages or from the main airport page. And with that, you can kind of gauge what it would cost you in actually time, money, etc. But really, it's that life uh, it's half a day of your life. Let's put it that way. And so when we look at the fares, we're still very competitive. So we're within 50, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $60 a lot of the time with Cedar Rapids and Moline. And with that, that's the gauge. When I look at it when I'm traveling for business, if I have to spend a half a day or an hour and a half, 2 hours on each end, getting out of an airport, getting out to the far parking, paying for parking, getting on the road, all of those things end up kind of chewing into a half a day. And if you do that on either end, that's the real value that we want everybody to see. We want to stay competitive on fares, which we are for the most part by this sample, within, a few bucks of these other airports. And with that, then, and I also traveling with kids, when I got to haul two kids all the way down the road as well and put that into the half a day perspective, there is sort of a exponential value in a lot of that ease. And so that's what we're really looking at, for everybody to consider when they're taking this into account of like, how much is it worth in my time to not have to drive all the way back and forth to Cedar Rapids or Moline twice in the course of a trip, and then gauging that against what are very competitive fares at this time. The one thing we also wanted to announce or get the word out today is that Denver Air has launched a frequent flyer program, and it's super aggressive in my opinion, super beneficial to the user. And instead of using miles, et cetera, or building up over time and then trying to apply those miles, it actually is just a straight up point system. You fly 6 segments. It could be 3 round trips or 4 individuals and a round trip, and you earn a free segment. It's basically 16% off of what you're paying just right out of the gate, and really quickly attainable, especially if you're traveling for business or you've got a couple vacations, you've got family. You really are going to accumulate these quickly and end up with free legs in very short order. There used to be a couple of rental car companies actually that work this way, and you kind of got free cars all the time when you were using the service consistently. And that's what we're hoping, again, as another incentive here to start using this consistently. Choose DBQ, competitive fares, better time, and now a benefit on the back end where you're going to get a discount on your overall or get free legs as you're traveling, as you continue to travel. Dropping into kind of the nuts and bolts of where we've been and mentioned earlier, we've been doing well. We've been building the service. We have, from out of the gate, we've seen the bookings pick up week to week. We saw a very nice spike when excuse me, just got to move the window here. A very nice spike when we saw the early schedule announced. We've seen that kind of continue on through. We have a lot of momentum in this, but we have a ways to go is the thing. And so with that, where we've seen this nice even gain all the way through, the dotted line is really where we need to go. And I'll give you a specific number in a second, but it's, we need to add, 20 to 30% on the number each week. It doesn't translate necessarily into a ton of bodies. It sounds like a big percentage. What we've seen is nice even usage of passengers. This is the weekly travel, like weekly passengers traveling each week. And since we announced the early schedule, it's kicked back up to where our highest levels are. So we're very pleased to see that. There's been an immediate reaction. We've only been flying it for 4 weeks and only booking it for, I think, 6 or 7. And so there's a lot of opportunity here. But again, we have a little ways to go, or a ways to go. Where we want to be is at that dotted line. And really, to give a hard number, is we want to try to get to 80% full. It's a 50-seat plane. It's 40 people a day. So from November 8th through May 15th, and understanding we took some hits with the Chicago construction, with getting everybody used to booking, on different sites for multiple airlines, and getting the service dialed in, honestly, with just the little challenges that we saw here and there. We ran some fairly soft loads at around 33%. The minute we announced the morning flights, it jumped, 8+ points, where already now we're seeing it at 41%. We expect that to continue to fill. Our goal is at 80%. And I know that looks like a large jump, but in real numbers, it is just 17 additional passengers on average a day to what we're flying now. It is very much attainable. In looking back at the historic service with American, we were averaging 100 passengers a day, and the loads were very comparable at 75 to 80%, varying by month, etc. And so we know that the market is there. We know that the volume is there. And when looking at population and the catchment area, they call it, that we draw people from, if you condense it down right into Dubuque, within 30 miles, it's 180,000 people. If you even kick another 15 miles, it's over 300,000 people. And we're going to compete with Moline and Cedar Rapids, and hopefully pull some people out of those middle zones who want an easier airport, a comparable fare, and an overall savings for them, and likely a time savings as well. And so we know that the market's out there. We just need to get the market engaged and back in the habit and retrained into the habit of using the Dubuque Airport. Just a quick, and to move off into how we've made this happen and how this has come around, is Dubuque acquired a SCASD grant a number of years ago. And in this day and age, post-COVID, it has become more or less a requirement to help mitigate risk or support airlines coming into a new market. At our airline conference last week, this was a very common thing and a very common conversation. It is very difficult right now with where the airlines are, and we came out of a pilot shortage. Now we have a little bit of an aircraft shortage, or tightening aircraft resources, and so there's always heavy competition for these aircraft and the resources that the airlines have. And so post-COVID, it has basically been necessary to use a minimum revenue guarantee or some kind of revenue subsidy to convince these airlines to come in and help you develop your market. The more passengers and the more revenue you put on the plane brings down those MRGs. Dubuque has been in the great situation to have a SCASD grant that has helped get the service off the ground here, that has provided the initial investment to really cover the most of what it has taken and cost Denver Air to operate the service. We just spent some great time in DC talking to our representatives about the fact that the models have changed, though. In a post-COVID world, as we all know, everything's 30% more expensive, and that goes for the airlines too. The SCASD program hasn't necessarily scaled with that, is what we talked to our politicians about, and how we might make that bring that more into parity. And what's ending up happening, and this is all across multiple markets that we have with SCSIs, that the SCSIs are getting used in fairly short order rather than over 1, 2, or 3 years that they were originally intended. And so with that, we have been having some discussions about what the go forward looks like. I think, Mr. Mayor, I will hand the ball back to you at that point. And
Yeah, I'm back, Matt. Thank you very much. So, yeah, with this, the challenge that we have here is that the minimum revenue guarantee that was being paid for through the SCSD grant up until this point. So we have moved through that with the challenges that we had in the early parts of these flights. We have gotten to the point where that SCSD grant will be running through, and we are looking to identify potential additional funds to be able to support the sustainability of these flights. I want to focus in on the second bullet point on this slide, though. The minimum revenue guarantee is only there to fill the gap of tickets that are not sold to make it to the minimum revenue that the airline needs. This is, and I just again, this is what the way it works in any market. This is how new flights get started. And what happens is once those flights are sustainable, then you no longer have that minimum revenue that you need to pay out. So what we are looking at here is an opportunity, the greatest place we've been so far, actually, to get to the point where we are flying with enough people on the plane to be able to not have to pay out those minimum revenues. So we're working diligently to get this done. We're confident we're going to be able to do it. But this is one of the biggest reasons that we're coming with this discussion today, and the conversation around this is the moment to be able to get on these flights and to really start flying with Denver Air. So Matt, you can move to the next one. So this is really the bottom line. At this moment, we have a choice right in front of us, and I think when we look at this, we need to think about what I was talking about in the beginning of this conversation. What do the next few years look like for us in the Dubuque region? And with that vision of what we have created together, we have an incredible opportunity sitting right here to keep these flights and keep on going. But I think what the numbers show that Matt just showed us is that in order to make this work, in order for this to last, we need to start getting on the plane in greater numbers. We need to start choosing to fly out of Dubuque, and we need to actually start working together to get that done. So much of this is very regional. A lot of this is something that's with the business community. We're reaching out to you specifically to say this is a great chance for us to build this together and be able to do it. I hope that you can walk away with the focus that we have accomplished so much with this. I want to put a really positive spin on this part of it, because we have really come so far in the last 2 years to be able to get to where we are right now. So we're doing an incredible job. What we need to do right now is punch the gas and go even further. And we have that opportunity to do it right in front of us. So I want to turn it over to Molly Grover and Jason White with Greater Dubuque Development Corporation, Molly with the Chamber. They can say a few words here, and then we're going to move into any questions that people might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the Chamber and GDDC and my colleague Jason White, a fellow DBQ Air Board member, I don't know if his microphone is working or not, but thank you so much for joining us. We are going to open it up to Q&A, but we want to make sure that you choose Dubuque. Your travel choices do matter, and I don't have my camera. Oh, my camera's not working. Your travel choices do matter, and you have to fly Dubuque first. We are in control of our own destiny, and we know that we have all the right stuff to make this work and get it over the finish line. We know this can work because pre-COVID, we had 80% load factors on our first flight of the day into the hub that we all know and love as O'Hare. And we need all of us working together to keep the air service that we have. Jason, are you able to offer a few words?
Can you hear me now? No? Okay. Back to you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. Sorry. It wasn't working earlier, so I'm glad it's working now. Yeah, just to piggyback on what Molly said is, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing in a different way, but with respect to our community, it's really talking about, a culture of winning here. And, we talk about growing our population, winning business expansions, helping our colleges continue to get their students here from the deep pockets of the country, uh, and really working to build a world-class city and region through a will to win, so to speak. And air service is a big part of that. And I think the mayor talked a little bit of that about the story that's been uh, going viral right now from David Farley, who moved his family or moved with his family away from Dubuque before the economic collapse in the 1980s. Now has come back and seeing what kind of a world-class city we have. And so it's also about getting people here. It's about not just us leaving, but also other people getting here easily to experience our community. And one of the things I'll just say with Greater Dubuque Development and also the Chamber too, uh, you know, with the work that we do with meeting with existing businesses, and I know with Greater Dubuque Development, many of you are familiar with a program that we have called Info Action. Uh, we invite your candidness in those surveys about talking about the service, what it means to your company, what it means to your employees, the families that make up your employer base, and what we can continue to improve the service. And hopefully you've seen responsiveness from Denver Air and the Dubuque Regional Airport, et cetera, and that will continue. So as we talk today and open up to Q&A about big picture ways that we continue to improve the service, we also invite you to continue to give us feedback because it's very vital that we continue the service, make it sustainable, and your participation in that is very vital in all of this. So just a few thoughts on there before we go to Q&A.
So at this time, we're going to open it up to Q&A. Justine, I need your help here. I don't know if you can unmute people or you want people to put questions in the chat. You tell me.
I can do it either way. There is a button to raise hands. If you want to do it that way, you can put it in the chat so that way I can see who you are and unmute you that way. I will say Jill Connor said was asking about the true cost calculator. I am going to put that in the chat for everyone to be able to view. Let's see.
So you can either raise your hand, put your question in the chat, and Justine can unmute you.
And real quick, as we just Molly, if I could break in for a second, as we get started, one of the things that I think is important as we do this question and answer session here is that all of us have some specific things that have happened on any flight we've ever been on, or anything that we've ever done when it comes to flying, and sometimes you have those specific issues that are very individual to you. I think what we're hoping for with this question and answer session is not so much about individual, things that have gone off like a one-off type of situation, but more big picture questions about what we're trying to accomplish here. Those individual questions are very welcomed. We encourage you to talk to Denver Air if you had specific issues. Talk to Todd at the airport with specific issues. Reach out to Jason and Molly with any specific business issues. But for this moment, we're hoping we can focus on the bigger picture here as we have these discussions. Just thought I'd throw that in.
Okay. All right. I think the easiest thing to do. So first question comes from Ben Potoff, and it says, if purchasing flights for my children, can I accumulate their segment credits, or is it a passenger specific?
That's a good question. And actually, as I was talking about it earlier, my assumption was it was under the account, but that is something we need to check with Denver Air, and we will get back to you all on that.
All right. Next question from Bob Woodward. Seems like we have two goals. Number one, refill the MRG for a period of time while we, two, get more people in the seats. What are the prospects for number one? Can people on this call help? And if you need clarification, I can unmute Bob to for further.
No, I think thanks, Bob, for that question. So this is Brad. I'll jump in on that one. Bob, honestly, I think the prospects are good. We're just in the process now of, as DBQ Air, identifying what types of funding sources we'd be able to use for this. So that's the first answer to the first part of your question. The second question that you asked is, can people on this call help? Essentially, yes, in one of two ways. The biggest way everybody can help is to make it so we don't have a minimum revenue guarantee that we need to pay out. So flying is the number one goal, the number one way to be able to help this entire situation. So that's the biggest, most important message that I want to make sure that everybody gets. The second is, potentially, it really kind of depends on the what I just said. I mean, it kind of depends on the load factors and what's going to happen and what type of minimum revenue guarantee we would need to continue to have. Matt, I'm going to ask you because, in other markets, this is something that that does occur at time, but the goal is to get to sustainability so you don't have a minimum revenue guarantee to pay out. But I know you've mentioned that in other markets, there are times where you have to, it takes a while to build these flights up. It takes a while to get to the point of real sustainability. And you've worked with some other markets that do have mechanisms where they do have a minimum revenue guarantee that might be paid out in small doses for maybe even in a couple of years. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes. And just to take a hot second on that, and looking at some other markets that we work with that I live in, is that where we are with this progression is very normal. Like we have a couple of markets early in the service, and the numbers are actually very similar, and the progress is very similar. And then I had a market that's kind of in between ours that is 2 years in, really, actually a year and a half in, and kind of just made its first material steps, really against that guarantee. And then we have one that's a third year in that made massive steps that really saw the market mature and come, predominantly off the guarantee. And those will take different times in different places, but just to your point that it's a progression. And then what we've seen in these different destinations in terms of MRG is lots of different combinations of smaller setups. So a piece of lodging tax is honestly a very common way to fund it. A business improvement district of some sort. A collective voluntary contribution between a set of businesses or industries. So whether it's a retail set of businesses or a manufacturing or operational set of industries or a tourism-based set of industries, casinos actually also participating. Just those things will come together and create even voluntary ways to go at this. And really, a lot of it is many times is focused as a pass through to either visiting guests or visiting businesses. So it's not necessarily coming back to the weight of the locals to fund a 1 or 2% fee onto something, but really a pass through to a different industry or to a visiting guest. But then also, if you have a downtown district, the locals also taking a share of that. And so there's a lot of ways to actually to try to set this up where you create a consistent or sustained stream, over this, 2, 3, 4 years to try or to build the service to sustainability.
Yeah. So, and I'll close that out because, and going back to you, Bob, and your question, this is a conversation that we need to continue to have as a community. But what I will tell you, as DBQ Air, is that we've said over and over, we're trying to leave no stone unturned. So we have talked about every possibility that we could figure out to do things like what Matt has just described. A lot of what we've discovered so far is that Iowa's laws are different than some of the places that Matt has worked, and we don't have some of the same mechanisms that in the state that some other states have to be able to build some sort of a funding stream using certain taxes or certain things like that. So we've explored those possibilities. We're looking at different things, and I want to make sure that everybody is very clear on this point too. We will never stop talking to our federal partners about the importance of grants like the Small Community Air Service Development Grant and the need to fund those at greater amounts. The true, I would just say that it was really clear to us in this situation the challenges that a community like ours can have in building air service. We may have had a few more than others, especially with the construction situation that we had at O'Hare, but the challenges that it takes, they're costly and they are difficult to get through, and the minimum revenue guarantee, the amount that we're able to get through things like SCASD is just simply not enough for a community our size. And that's an important message that we want to continue to tell our federal partners. We're working with them to try and identify that. There's definite disagreement there. So we're going to continue to work with them. But everybody's at the table talking about it. And we're just going to keep turning over every single stone and figuring out how can we make this work going forward if we need to continue to do so.
Excellent. Next question comes from Kay Takis. Do promotions like the buy one, get one free for baseball games count towards our fill rates? Second follow-up, are more of these promos planned to gain exposure?
Matt, that's probably a good question for you.
Yeah. They do count. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the revenue that's attached to a passenger. So if we're filling up, added seats on a buy one, get one, I put that more in a marketing, category than a revenue generating category. And hopefully those people are going to come back and fly again. And we are really trying to megaphone and broaden the service with any and all marketing and partnership that we can get going right now. I don't know that they have any specific promos planned at this moment, but it's something that we as DBQ Air can keep in touch with Denver Air on and let everybody know.
Well, and we do have the promo running now that is a part of that. So some of the different organizations that are parts of DBQ Air are helping to run that promo that you've probably seen on social media.
Okay. Next question from Elizabeth Bonds. Is there a possibility for an earlier flight? A lot of the morning flights that head to the West Coast leave between 8 and 9 a.m.
Yeah.
That's another good question. Yeah, we actually tried to push it up even another hour just to see if it was possible, and it did not work within the operations at ORD at O'Hare actually, with the gate times, etc. So for now, the 7:50 is the time, but it's something that we'll continue to discuss with them and also continue, as Jason had mentioned, to take feedback from the businesses in the community. We've done very well in pushing hard and raising our hand on this to this point. And so if we do want further adjustment, I think we can continue there. But we're also very pleased when we looked at the connectivity at 750, even versus 650 or 7. It's a little bit broader. We have a few extra, and especially coming back in at the time that we return. And so hopefully we can get you where you're going, but I do understand that if you can gain another hour on the West Coast, we get where you're coming from on that. So for now, I guess the short answer is that we're going to be at the 7:50 slot. It is something we will continue to look at for an earlier rotation.
I do want to jump in and add one thing to that, Matt. So I think it's important that everybody knows that the original time that we did get from Denver Air was actually later than 7:50. It was a little bit later than that, and we got back to them immediately and said, we need to do better than that. Can we please do better? And we worked with them for a few days, and with Matt's help, we were able to get them to 7:50 to be able to do that. And not to say that they were pushing back or being difficult about it. It's just they have a lot of things they have to think about when they're putting a plane at O'Hare and putting a plane in different places. But we really appreciated them moving that time when we said that we needed it to be as early as possible. The only other thing I'd add to it, Beth, is that this West Coast thing, I really do think that Denver Air is serious about wanting to have a Denver connection from here. They're talking about it still. They want to do it, but they will not do it if we don't show them that we have the demand to fly. I think that's just straight numbers and economics. Is we need to show the demand here, and then the willingness from Denver Air to have a Western connection is very real, and I think will continue. And this gets into the conversation of how do we get more flights? We fly this one. So I think those things all fit into this conversation too.
Perfect. That was actually her follow-up question, was the Denver Air. So you already answered that for her. Next question from Ashley Bossman. For groups booking multiple flights, what is an approximate rate range to include in proposals for budgeting? Ashley's coming from Hotel Julian.
Oh, that's great. And I think any and all group that we can get on these planes would be fantastic. And that's something I would say to work directly with Denver Air on. So when you have a group, or honestly, just to get your sales pack set, it sounds like, I think that's a call to the sales center there, and to work with them on what that flat group rate like might look like, and then you can include that through general bids. But I think that they'll also be very handy in providing you specific bids for specific group opportunities that come up.
Okay, next question from Dan Walsh. Where do we, this is multiple questions in this. Where do we anticipate additional funding for the MRG to come from? Municipal funding. What is the monthly burn rate on draws on the MRG at past and current load factors? With load factors of 40%, it seems like we may be throwing good money at bad money when we are not really close to an 80% load factor.
Well, okay, so I appreciate those questions. So, I'll try to jump in. Anybody else can help, but additional funding, I think, I mean, this is again where we're turning over every single stone. So there's possibilities from funding that could be municipal. It could come from that. It could also come from partners that are within DBQ Air. It could also come from partners outside of the group that we already have formed. So we are in the early stages of looking at what we could put together to do that. So really we're trying to be as forward looking and thinking through that as we possibly can. As far as monthly burn goes, I think, you know, when you look at the numbers, the real challenge came from the November through March time when we had multiple different issues that were going on. So we had, you know, like as Matt said, we tried the afternoon flights. It had worked in other markets. We were hoping that it would be something we could start with here, and the timing wasn't really working very well for people, and the loads weren't getting up there. But even so, I think they would have been better had we not had that construction issue at O'Hare. I think the construction issue at O'Hare was a major factor, and it really made things complicated. As far as projecting forward, that burn rate for any minimum revenue guarantee gets less and less as we see ticket sales tick up. So as Matt showed with some of the numbers that were there, as we see those numbers go up, then we see that number for the minimum revenue guarantee go down. The throwing bad money at, I can't remember exactly how you said it there, but the idea that this is not money well spent, or that in some way there's something better out there. There's nothing better out there. This is about as good as it gets in a situation that we have as a community like us. Somebody that's lost complete air service in the way that we lost it. To be able to get a company like Denver Air that has this interline agreement with both United and American to be able to come and fly to a major hub and then move that flight to mornings, that is a great situation. I mean, there are other cities in the United States lost flights at the same time as us that are still struggling. There are cities near us that have that are part of the Essential Air Service program that have a more difficult situation than we have right here. We really do have a incredible opportunity, just each and every one of us, to be able to help with this. I mean, this is our fate is in our hands here, and we have a really good company to work with. We have a really good situation with this interline agreement. This is money and time well spent working towards this solution and working on this particular flight. So we have, I think, just a great situation that we can make even better, and then it gets even better than that. I mean, once we do this and we succeed, we add flights. If we don't do this and we don't succeed, we lose this flight. There's definitely that possibility. And if we lose flights now, I really don't, based on the conversations that Matt has had with other airlines and other places and things that are going on in the country, I don't see us getting flights back for a few years. I think this would be a very challenging situation, which is why the opportunity that we have before us is such an incredible one.
Okay. Next question from Jason Duba. I would love to hear more about the vision for what regular, reliable air travel provides to Dubuque and its goals for the future. What are tangible differences we could see in a Dubuque with frequent air service?
I can try that one first. Well, Jason, I think going back to what I opened with in thinking about what the future of Dubuque looks like with all the things that are going on, you know, I think I think it's going to be hard to sustain a medical school with 800 students, faculty, and staff if you don't have reliable air service and you don't have more than what we have right now. So I think the vision that's being laid out by the people that are doing some of these big projects, like the medical school, like the Field of Dreams, that vision is what I think we can expect. But I think we need air service to do it. So I think that we have to have air service that is more numerous, and it's already reliable, but more sustainable, and more flights to more places. So I think we need to expect that. We need to build towards that, because that's what we really need to make these projects take off in the way that they really can. So I hope that answers that question.
If I can jump on to Mr. Mayor. So air service versus not having air service. Not having air service is a uncertain economic future. Having air service is an expected amenity in the 21st century economy, not just for businesses, but people who live in your community that expect that kind of access. So we're talking tourism. We have the Field of Dreams in our county with hundreds of baseball teams that come to visit on an annual basis. We have job growth and businesses that may want to locate. Those employers expect to have air service for their employees. That is an amenity that they want. Population growth. We need to have this amenity if we are going to expect to attract talent and keep talent here in our community. All very important factors to our continued economic growth and prosperity with air service. Without air service, it is certainly going to be a challenging environment.
Okay. Next question comes from Jason Davis. Help me understand, if we have asked local businesses to collaborate toward higher utilization, if we have, what do we learn? Do we need more conversations?
So is the question, have we asked business? I'm sorry, can you say that again, Justine?
Yeah. Help me understand, if we have asked local businesses to collaborate toward higher utilization. If we have, what did we learn? Do we need to have more conversations?
Yeah, I guess I'll try. So I guess yes is the short answer. We've been having conversations like this one. We've had multiple meetings like this. We've had multiple forums. We've had we actually had business specific business meetings that both Jason and Molly called. I can't remember how many we had, but it was a handful of business meetings that we had when at the beginning of this year, when we were talking about changing flights. Um, we've been talking about this with businesses from the very start, and all the way back to doing the major survey that we did before we even got air service back. So this has been a collaborative effort from everyone, and we've learned constantly. Honestly, I mean, we've just been learning constantly from everybody about what kind of changes we need. We've had people reaching out to us directly. Jason mentioned the info actions. There's been a lot of communication. I mean, that part I think we've been doing very well, and we've made very substantive, real changes based on that feedback.
Well, I'll add too. Hopefully, you can still hear me. I think this conversation right here is motivated with that purpose, right? To get engagement from the business community. And you're right, the one-on-one visits are important. Um, I think being responsive. I think the early flight work to try to get that flight is in direct response to the business community. With that said, I think feedback in terms of what else we can do to continue to engage the business community is feedback that is welcome. And so I don't think we can do enough engagement, probably, speaking personally. And some of the things we've done in our marketing, Randy and team have done a great job of highlighting testimonials from business leaders, talking about how they are excited about the early service. But yeah, I mean, it's continuing to build towards sustainability, being honest with where we're at right now, and continue to build upward and onward. And we can only do that through feedback from the business community. I mean, to be honest. So that feedback I think should be continuous and welcome. And I think we would all agree to that. So
Agreed. That feedback led to the morning flight. I mean, that is a dot to dot that you can connect. And we provided that feedback to Denver Air. And if we're being honest, from a chamber and GDDC and Dubuquer, our sole and primary focus has been the business community employers. We have found multiple ways to meet with employers and talk about whether it's through forums, whether that's one-on-one, whether when service started, we had listening sessions to talk about the air service and what it meant. We are continually and relentlessly reaching out to the business community. And to Jason's point, the feedback is really important because, again, the feedback led to the morning flight. We wouldn't have that today. And it's also worth noting, had we not started service in November with the flight that they gave us, we would not have the morning flight that we have today. Full stop.
All right, next question from Carrie Hansen. Are there plans to allow for booking international tickets originating in Dubuque? United doesn't allow it, and that is the easiest option for travel with this flight.
So at this point, as I've understood and having looked into this a month or two ago, is that we are able to connect, I think, through the American flights to international, but United does not with the way the systems marry up. So for the time being, that's going to be how those work within those United and American sites or systems. And I think the same will flow through to the online travel agents. So unfortunately for United International, it's going to be two bookings, one Denver Air to Chicago, and then your international out of Chicago. But American, you should be able to book those together or book those as one entire reservation.
Next question. Kevin Lynch asks, how much additional funding is needed to extend the MRG?
Thanks, Kevin. Well, again, it's entirely dependent on how many people fly. So just the gap shrinks depending on how many, or grows depending on how many people get on the plane. So the simplest answer to that question is it depends on what the load factors are going forward. So our projection is that the load factors will improve, but it will, because it needs to. We need to hit that certain mark on a monthly basis. So as long as people are flying, then the gap for the minimum revenue shrinks.
Okay. Next question comes from Courtney Chaffee. Have you seen an uptick in flights booked at all now that we are in the summer vacation time, or are we still battling the idea that CR and Moline have cheaper rates? Secondary question with that, has the marketing campaign to try and get more people to fly local made an impact on our flight numbers?
I'll jump in for a quick on that one and then I can hand it off. Yeah, we have seen both progression, in conjunction with going to the early flights with the summer travel season. And yes, I think we are still battling the perception that Cedar Rapids and Moline are cheaper. And I think that, there's and not, we've gathered samples of flights. We look at this all the time. We try to stay competitive. There's going to be times where we're cheaper. There's going to be times where we're more expensive. And we're, hoping again that people consider that what we went through earlier about, what's it worth in your time, energy, and hard costs to actually drive, an hour and a half to those airports, et cetera. And so I think that's something that this group again can collectively help combat out there, if that's the right word, or educate about in the fact that it is comparable and it's close and it's easier, and you have other tangible forms of savings or gain on booking out of Dubuque. On the second half of that, the city and Randy Gale have done a phenomenal job with their advertising campaign that has been getting the word out and adapted with each separate sort of stage of our development here, and including getting the word out about the early flights, et cetera, and continuing to want to push on that. I think if there's any opportunity in this meeting for partners to also participate with their lists, customer base, whatever outreach you might have, if you have existing marketing campaigns that might be able to blend something like this in, would be a huge help. And Mayor, I can throw it to you from there.
No, I think that was a pretty good answer. Yeah, the last piece I think is really an important one. Everybody's got the opportunity to be able to spread things through word of mouth or through their own marketing campaigns, and being able to do that. It is something that very specifically, going back to an earlier question, one of the very early things we did when these flights started was go and have individual meetings with business leaders in the community in all industries. So education, healthcare, manufacturing, other businesses, all people, to be able to discuss what what we're asking specifically for businesses to do, which is get on these planes and fly and spread the word to their own employees, their own clients. So all of that has been extremely helpful in getting this moving. And I think what we're saying here is the more of that we can do, the better.
Got a couple more questions. We'll try to get them in the next 5 minutes. Natalie Listerud, what is the biggest reason we're not seeing for Dubuquers to fly to DBQ? Are these reasons things that can be remedied?
So I'm going to interpret the question as what's the reason people are flying from other places?
Well, I think the question would be, why are Dubuquers specifically not flying Dubuque?
That's a good question. It really is. I think there might be a number of different reasons based on people's situations, but I do think that the challenge of the timing of the flights that we first had was a big reason why. But I think those reasons there are not as many reasons now. You know, with the morning flights and then evening return, we have a lot of reasons to fly out of Dubuque. I mean, it really is just that much better to do it. And then to add on to that, the reason for what it means for our community down the road. You know, the ultra low cost carriers are still a challenge, definitely. We can't compare to those. We can't, you can't sell tickets for a one-stop location for $75 like an ultra low cost carrier can. So the comparisons we see are with Cedar Rapids and Moline are comparisons of similar flights to what we have, a connecting flight. So I think the biggest challenge we have is just getting everyone to agree that this is this important and we need to change our behavior and start flying from here so that we can have a similar experience to what we get at other airports where you have multiple flights a day to be able to get on there. I think it's a major challenge to change everybody's actions from the last couple of years. And there are quite a few other variables that have to do with just air service in general, you know, like are people flying as much today as they used to, all those kinds of questions. But I do think that we have very few excuses at this point to not fly out of Dubuque. I think we have a great situation going here.
Question from Elizabeth Bonds. What are we doing to have transportation available from the airport to hotels when the flights arrive?
That's a Todd question.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so we do currently have Avis on the field, as many of you know, as a rental car operator. We have off-airfield agreements with Enterprise, and as a lot of you know, they're your Ubers and your Lyfts. We do have off-airport agreements with them. However, they're hit and miss, right? So you might catch them more on a weekend or an evening. We even have some staff that signed up. So when they're off shift, they can turn on their Uber or Lyft light and get maybe a passenger into town. I know there's at least 3 taxi operators that are listed here at the airport that we have agreements with. And again, you know, calling ahead would be ideal because, as you know, sometimes those can take 30, even up to 40 minutes sometimes to get if they're really busy. So I would just suggest checking out our website at flydbq.com. We've got a link on there that has all of our transportation options available. And also, you know, we always recommend that people think ahead when they're traveling and, you know, either pre-book or pre-reserve either a rental car or advise a taxi that they're going to be traveling from Dubuque to town, for example, or vice versa.
So we're going to run out of time. We have a minute left before it shuts down on us. Mr. Mayor, you want to close us out?
Actually, Molly, I would like you to read the message that Justine just put in the chat. I think it's a great message to end with, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, I got to find my chat here.
Otherwise,
Justine,
I can read it. Yep, I'll read it. So it's a message from Mike Portman. I want to make sure everybody saw this. It says, FYI on the marketing side, TH Media met with Randy Gale and Jesse Gavin last Friday. Understanding how critical the messaging is to get people on these flights, TH Media is providing dollar for dollar matching to help get the word out in our region.
Yeah. So thank you, Mike and the TH team. This is huge news. You know, I actually had somebody text me and say, hey, you should mention the TH thing. And I wanted to make sure that it came from you guys as we did this. And, you know, Molly and the chamber have been instrumental in in meeting with you on a regular basis. So this is the kind of help that our community needs. You know, when we all come together like this, this is how we get these things done. So huge thanks to the TH.
Yes, and thank you to everyone for making this a priority in your schedule today. We encourage you to reach out to any of us with questions about air travel. Don't travel to travel, fly DBQ first, fly it often. Buy your tickets today. Thanks, everybody.